Can this gaming device from Logitech help get this old, retired gamer back into gaming? I very rarely play video games these days, but I was a huge gamer back in the day when I was a kid and in my early 20s. I just got a bit disillusioned with it. And I specifically remember playing Metal Gear Solid 4 on the PlayStation something and just being really frustrated with it. It was about that sort of time when games were turning into mini movies, which would be fine if one, the movie element wasn't so utterly terrible, and two, if you could just skip the damn things and start playing the game. The other challenge that I have with gaming these days is time, or lack of it. I'm a dad, I'm a business owner. Trying to fit gaming in is tricky. When Logitech got in touch and said, do you fancy trying out the G Cloud, because we think for someone like you it could be quite a draw, I thought, why not? This device has been out in the US for a little while now, but it's coming to Europe this month, and I've been playing with it for the last 4 or 5 weeks. I've got lots of thoughts. You've probably got one overriding question about the G Cloud. What is it? Well, basically, it's an Android tablet with a massive honking screen on it and some gaming controls all over the place. When it comes to the specs, it's not going to set the world alight. It's got a Snapdragon 720G processor, 64GB of memory, and an admittedly very impressive 7-inch IPS 1080p multi-touch display. That display is 60Hz, which is important for gaming, but in terms of the rest of the specs, it's got a 6000 mAh battery that promises 12 hours of gaming, stereo speakers, 3.5mm audio jack for your headphones, a USB-C port for charging and headphone support, haptic feedback, and it runs Android 11. As the name suggests, the G Cloud is more suited to cloud gaming, and it's compatible with Xbox Cloud Gaming, GeForce Now from Nvidia, Steam, and several others, although it's pretty clear that Logitech is really pushing Xbox and Nvidia's GeForce Now. As you'd guess, that means you need a subscription to one of those services to start playing cloud games on this. And if we look at the price of Xbox Game Pass Ultimate, which is the thing that you need to get onto the cloud gaming service, it does take the first year's cost of this device well beyond €500. And that's taking into account the cost of the G Cloud itself, which is €359. So that begs the question, is it worth it? Firstly, a note on build quality. It's really good, although that shouldn't come as a surprise because Logitech stuff is generally very impressive. It does feel like it could take a bit of a beating. The buttons feel very satisfying to use. Joysticks are really nice and tactile. It's got enough buttons on here as well for pretty much any type of game. So they've thought very carefully about how to build and configure this device. And the display does deserve special mention because it is absolutely wonderful. As mentioned earlier, it's a 1080p panel, 60Hz, it's plenty bright enough, it feels very expansive without being too cumbersome. The only thing that is a little bit disappointing is the speakers. They are pretty loud, but there's not much grunt there, so you will be using headphones. As for the battery life, stunning. 12 hours is completely possible, and it barely sips any power on standby. So from that perspective, it's really convenient. As for the cloud gaming experience, I am a complete noob to this. So if you're like me and you're used to installing games on your console and playing them locally on those sort of devices and PCs, the fact that you can have a relatively low-powered handheld device like this knocking out basically Xbox Series X style games is mind-blowing. I tried to explain the significance of this to my girlfriend, but she didn't really care. Trust me, if, like me, you're more of a traditional gamer, cloud gaming is just so impressive. And on the G Cloud, it absolutely flies. I've tried both Xbox Game Pass, the Xbox Cloud Gaming, and also the Nvidia GeForce Now. The latter takes a bit of patience, actually. You have to, it's not the fault of the G Cloud at all, but you have to log in multiple times. I didn't think it was that obvious which games you could play as part of the subscription versus the ones that you had to have in your library. That was a bit confusing. Whereas the Xbox Cloud Gaming, you jump in, and as long as you have the subscription, you can play whatever games are on there. And the experience of playing those games on this device has been absolutely fantastic. I've had 1 or 2 instances where things have slowed down on my connection at home, which is a super fast broadband connection from Virgin, it has been pretty much flawless. And if you weren't aware, all of the processing for these games is being done on the cloud, as the name suggests, so this device isn't really doing anything apart from accepting that stream and putting it on this lovely display. So as mentioned, you do need a fairly decent internet connection to get this thing working with something like Xbox Cloud Gaming. So you need 20 megabits per second for 1080p 60 frames per second on Xbox Game Pass, and you need 25 megabits per second for the same performance on GeForce Now. We are gradually getting to the point where home broadband has those kind of speeds, but not everyone has it, so it's definitely worth bearing that in mind. And if you were hoping to take this on public transport and use it there, remember that you can't download games from Xbox Cloud Gaming onto this. It does need that constant broadband connection. Without that, you can't play those games. So it isn't quite as portable as something like the Nintendo Switch, but for me it's been great to get these short, sharp fixes of gaming while at home. So if my girlfriend's watching TV, or I just need to be quiet because our son's asleep upstairs, the ability to pick it up and dive straight into a top tier title with incredible graphics, amazing sound with headphones has been really fantastic. You can also use this to stream games from your Xbox or PlayStation, so if the TV is in use by another family member, you can connect this to your Xbox, for instance, and you can still play FIFA. But I can guarantee there's one question rolling around in your head at the moment, which is, who is this for? Okay, so Logitech has obviously got its own ideas about who the G Cloud is for, and according to them, it's, well, 3 potential groups. First one is people who want to play games away from their usual desk or gaming setup. The second is people who want to play AAA games but don't want to spend all of the money on the hardware required to run them. And the third is people who want to do some gaming when the main TV is occupied. But I think the clue lies in one of the words they use in their press material for people like me, which is graze. So the idea that you graze on gaming. I've never heard that before, but it does make quite a bit of sense. And I think that means that the G Cloud is meant for people like me. So people who understand and have experience of the joy of gaming, but for whatever reason haven't done it much recently, either because of time or funds or whatever. And I've really enjoyed that ability to pick this thing up and just get into a bit of gaming when the TV's in use, or 30 minutes before bed, which I know is a bad thing to do. Now obviously there is some competition. I haven't tried any of it because, like I say, I'm not a gamer. This isn't a gaming channel. If you want me to try this stuff out, let me know in the comments. I'll happily oblige. But the first one is obviously the Steam Deck. And the Steam Deck is arguably aimed at hardcore gamers. You have to install games on that device itself, so it requires some serious grunt to get those games running. That means it's a bit more expensive than the G Cloud at €449, and it does have a fan built into it, which I'm told does spin up quite readily. This is completely silent. But I think there's a pretty easy distinction between the G Cloud and the Steam Deck. The Steam Deck is for people who are serious about gaming. G Cloud is, well, it will satisfy some of those people, but it's more for casual gamers. Next up, we have the Nintendo Switch, which has a huge, passionate fan base. It's roughly the same price as the G Cloud. It's about €349, but just like the Steam Deck, you have to buy the games for the Switch and install them on the device. And the Switch is definitely aimed at casual and social gaming. I think that makes the Switch the biggest competitor for the G Cloud, although obviously you can't play Xbox or Nvidia cloud gaming on the Switch. I have really enjoyed playing games on this G Cloud. It's a really impressive piece of hardware. I think the support for the Xbox Cloud Gaming Service and Nvidia's GeForce Now is very smart. The ability to stream games from your console to this adds another dimension. However, it does ask that you spend money on the device itself and the subscription to the Cloud Gaming Service. And that does narrow the market a little bit. You are at the mercy of whatever games appear on things like Xbox Cloud Gaming. They do disappear as well, by the way. It's a bit like Apple Music, your favorite album's there 1 minute and then it's not there the next. But if you don't treat gaming as seriously as some people, so if for you just want this very nicely made device that you can pick up and, thanks to that battery life, not worry about it being charged, and just crack on with some gaming while the TV is being used by someone else, well, it's a very tempting proposition. But I'd love to hear from you. Are you tempted by the G Cloud? And if so, why? Equally, are you not tempted by it? Again, let me know the reasons in the comments. And if you've still got some time, keep watching for a link to the only other gaming device I've reviewed, which is this, the very cute Playdate. Link at the end of this video.